has been an awakening. Have you felt it?
Light it up.
Punch it.
Welcome to Unmistakably Star Wars, your source for a high-quality, informative, and entertaining look into the Star Wars galaxy. So strap yourself in, because here's where the fun begins.
So I was talking to Dave the other day.
Wait. Dave?
Yeah, I was talking to Dave the other day. Dave and I were sitting down
Who?
and
Dave who? I don't.
Dave Filoni, executive producer of Star Wars Rebels. Dave Filoni. Maybe you've heard of him, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Dave, listen to you.
So, for those of you that haven't been keeping track with us the last few days on the Twitterverse, had some fairly exciting news. I was sitting around the household last Thursday evening when I got a notification on my phone, and it was good friend of the pod, Clayton Sandell, who, as you well know, is ABC News correspondent 2020.
Such a name dropper, Ed.
People's feet are hurting right now. I'm dropping so many names. But nonetheless, Clayton was scheduled to go to the Star Wars Rebels finale private screening at Disney Studios in Burbank. And I don't know, there was a cat stuck in a tree or something, and he had to rush out to cover that story. And he said, "Would you like to go?" And I said, yes. Yes, I would like to go.
Of course you would.
I would like to go. So I was click-clacking away and found a flight down there and landed the next afternoon. And what I was told was the doors don't open until 6, and I got there around 3:30. So I walked in there, and Jonah Marie Messias from the Wookiee Gunner and Rebels Chat was there, and of course she's
that's
part of
cool.
the network. So
Yeah.
we started talking, and there was maybe about 6 or 7 other podcasters in this room, and we're talking, and all of a sudden, a certain executive producer with a cowboy hat and a wolf on his t-shirt came strolling in, sipping his lemonade, and he sat down next to me, Jeremy.
He did.
He sat. I was not sitting next to Dave Filoni. Dave Filoni was sitting next to me.
How many empty seats were there for him to pick from?
Dave, are you listening?
At that table, there was only one seat that was empty. But nonetheless,
But he sat next to you.
he sat next to me.
There you go.
And so it was a great time. We got to go around. He allowed everyone at the table to ask him one question. And it was absolutely amazing to absolutely just sit there and listen to his answers.
Yeah.
He's so profound. So profound.
He's a sharp guy.
He is. And just it makes me appreciate Rebels that much more when we know like who the creative voices and minds are behind things, right?
Yeah.
And so thoughtful. And so we got a chance to ask a question, and he didn't answer my first question because I asked for his home address, but he said no. But nonetheless, no, he was very thoughtful and answered my question. And our patrons actually got that audio. It's about 35 minutes of audio exclusive for our patrons.
Yeah.
And they know what he said. They know the answer to the question.
They know.
I asked him this. I said, "Hey, I know there's you're making decisions regarding story all the time, right? Yeah. Is this going to fit? Is that going to fit?" I said, "But what is the creative process behind when something's going to have a ripple effect in canon?
Yeah, it's a
you're
good
going to blow
question.
canon wide open."
Yeah.
And his answer, I thought, was profound. I would.
It was good.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was.
Yeah.
And then so his assistant Tracy, who was awesome, she said, "Hey, let's get together. Let's have a group picture." And so everyone got up, but he left his lemonade on the table. And I thought,
There's your chance.
there's my chance. I could probably get that straw, get the Ancestry.com DNA swab going,
Oh, yeah.
and I could know a little bit about the Filoni family.
You could clone him.
Right? We could clone them, and we could have Star Wars Rebels
Just call
forevermore.
it a Camino,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
see what you can do.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Plus, who knows what a DNA straw of Dave Filoni could go for on eBay,
Yeah, I hadn't even thought about that.
right? I mean, there's all kinds of angles and possibilities there. So,
Good point.
anyways, welcome to Unmistakably Star Wars, my little tauntauns. We are glad that you are on this journey with us. I'm Devin Kleffer, your curator of content this evening, and joining me in the USW World Headquarters in the Bay Area, the one and only Barb the Canadian.
Hey, everybody.
Also on the campus tonight, the one and only Mr. Jeremy Scott.
Howdy.
And representing the Deep South, the land of sweet tea and sweet home Alabama, the one and only Mr. Carl Hassler.
Hey, if I sound distracted, I'm trying to type out my pilot episode of Ahsoka and Sabine that Dave asked me to do. So,
I believe that's already been typed out. But nonetheless, welcome. And then, as always, representing the East Coast, the one and only Eve. Welcome, Eve.
Hey, everybody.
So I hope this is not going to surprise any one of you, and certainly, hopefully, it's not going to surprise our listeners. But we're just talking Rebels tonight.
Just Rebels.
Just Rebels.
Rebels.
So if indeed you have not yet seen the finale of Rebels, this would be a great time to press pause, come back after you've seen the finale, and then rejoin us. And before I forget, I mentioned earlier that Clayton Sandell from ABC allowed me the opportunity to go down to Disney Studios in Burbank and see the private screening. And so for this episode, we will now be called Unmistakably Clayton. So, welcome to Unmistakably Clayton. Let's get ready to jump into Rebels. We'll also be taking a closer look tonight. We're actually going to zoom in even more on the Rebels situation and actually ask this question. What will the legacy of Star Wars? What will the legacy of Star Wars Rebels be? Will it be something that is forgotten about soon? Will it actually have ripples in canon that we'll trace back to its standing in our lives or somewhere in between? We'll discuss that as well. So let's go ahead and jump right into what would normally be our news segment, and let's just go around. Barb, let me begin with you. When it comes to the Rebels finale, give me some of your general thoughts on the finale itself. What worked for you? What didn't work for you?
It was epic. Everything worked for me. There wasn't a lot in that episode that I did not like. Right up to, from the beginning to the end, it ended in a way for me that I wasn't expecting.
Wow. Okay.
We're going to get into it later, but just by jumping forward past the Battle of Endor, I was like, oh, wow, we're actually getting more into where these characters are going. And I did not expect that. I thought we'd kind of have more of a finale to them.
Okay.
The way he did it, way better.
Okay.
It was really good.
I love what you said there because I want to come back to that in just a second after we have a chance to go around because there was something about that statement that rung true for me as well when I was in the theater there at the private screening in Disney Studios, Burbank, California. Carl, jump in here though. What are some of the things that really impacted you upon your viewing of the finale? What worked for you? What didn't?
Well, I think what Barb just said, those last 2 minutes of the episode probably gave me more goosebumps and almost brought me to tears, especially with the original score from Star Wars playing in the background as it's going out. So that worked a lot for me. I think that what didn't work as much as we had basically with the episode before, you had, almost an hour of just action.
Right.
And then which was good. I mean, I loved how they brought everybody, all these things that you thought, well, these one-off episodes that don't matter, and they bring all these different characters back, and they all work together. So I thought that was good. I just wish they had, I would take less of that, though, and have a little more, just like the last episode be that epilogue that Sabine said. I would look, and I understand that it's maybe because of the target audience being young, they're going to want the action more than that character development, but just actually seeing Kallus maybe go to that planet and see the Lasats and have more discussion about that, and see Ahsoka and Sabine have discussions at the end of this. You could take Ahsoka, you could take what happens with Hera, you could take what happens with Kallus and Zeb, and split that 3 ways into a 20-minute episode itself. And I know you want to finish the big arc with ending up the Empire and doing what they set out to do from the beginning. But I would have liked to have taken a breath and had that last episode of just enjoying the characters without having all that action.
That's an interesting part because one of the things that voice actor Steve Bloom, who voices Zeb, said when they showed he and Kallus Zeb's Home World, and he did it in a Zeb voice, and I'll blow it, but here's my poor impersonation of that. And he said, yeah, Zeb finally got his man. And it was just like this great moment where the entire theater erupted. So yeah, it was good. Jeremy, what are some of your thoughts? What really worked for you in this finale?
I don't know about you guys, but just seeing Ezra's arc complete, I loved that you see his development. He outsmarted Thrawn.
Wow.
And that's pretty badass.
Yeah.
You know, that's really cool to see. And just his maturity. And on the way over here, my eldest, Sophia, she's 10, she was starting the Rebel series over. And I just kind of paused for a minute and watched the first few minutes of that first episode. And it was really neat just to see that and go, oh, wow, what a journey Ezra Bridger has been on. And we got to take that ride. So that stood out to me as one of the big things, is just his development. Again, Kevin Kiner, my goodness, what a musician, what a composer. The music had the riffs of Star Wars that we love, but he went in some directions that were unique but engrossing and aided the story. And you know, you're hearing a lot of people right now saying, give this guy a feature film, a Star Wars feature film, and I'm going to add my voice to that. Yes, give him something big for Star Wars. It's time.
He really, and there's several episodes where we can look back on. And I think one of them is the first introduction that we see the Purgils, which we'll talk about them later. But it was it was beyond Star Wars, but yet it still had this very operatic feel to it, very almost like Space Odyssey type, It was just phenomenal. Unfortunately,
Legacy
he couldn't be there
Williams,
the other night, but that's another thing that Dave had brought up in the Q&A panel after the screening is Rebels is of course successful, but once again we see how music and Star Wars mesh so well together. You had mentioned that your kiddos had watched it. What was their general feedback and impressions after viewing?
You know, it was interesting, and Barb, your kids watched
I
it
watched
too.
it with them last night.
Sam, here's what's fascinating and sort of dawned on me, and I'm sure some of the listeners are in the same boat.
Yeah.
It dawned on me when the episode before, what is it called? The door, World Between Worlds.
Okay.
World Between Worlds. When Sabine shows up, my son, who's 6 years old, jumped off the couch and started dancing around when Ahsoka comes through. When Ezra pulls her through. I mean, he was like, "She's alive, she's alive!" And it was in that moment. It was in that moment when I realized my son's his pathway drug to get it it's Rebels. This is his entrance to Star Wars, and when he's 35 there's gonna be fond memories of Rebels because I haven't seen him react to stories the way he has Rebels, and he is captivated. And I'll ask him, I'm like, who's your favorite character? Ezra. Who else? Kanan. I go, do you like Ahsoka? No. And he'll smile. He loves Ahsoka. And he won't admit it because it's a girl. And it's just so cute. And he loved it. But what I really found fascinating was my daughters, 8 and 10, who are, they'll watch it. But they watched the finale and both were sitting on the couch watching when I left. And Sophia, my eldest, was really involved. So they loved it. And they were taken by it. And Sam had a lot of questions, my 6-year-old, just about what happened to Ezra. Are we going to see? And when Ahsoka came on, he got really excited. And he was like, "Are they going to go get him? Is that next week?" And I was like, "No." I go, "It's over, Sam." So they love it.
Wow. I can't wait to touch on some of that because there was a lot of similar adult reactions last week when that happened. Eve, jump in here though. You're actually working your way as quickly as you possibly can to get to these final episodes. But let me ask this though: you've seen and heard the excitement not only on the pod but also through social media with all of your interactions with friends on there. And you're getting to know these characters better and better as you're watching them. And so, how are you feeling going into not having seen the finale yet, but know that there's something amazing awaiting for you?
I have been spoiled for almost all of the big giant plot events on the show.
Yeah. And
at first, I was kind of like, oh, I'll get to it now that I know what's going to happen. I'll take my time. But I hit my stride, I think, around episode 2 or 3 in season 2, and now I'm I can't wait to see it all. Because hearing about it from, second and third party perspectives is not the same at all. And I don't know, this is my first time going into something being really spoiled, but still finally falling in love with it. And hearing all of the chatter and even the heartbreak. I mean, because I live for some angst.
Yes.
So reading all about that is just like there are not enough hours in the day to watch this show now. So I'm trying, people. I'm trying.
But I think you bring up several interesting things, and one of them is, one of the things that it seems to ring true for myself in regards to Star Wars Rebels as a series is that I watched it almost out of a sense of obligation for the first season, but it wasn't until the latter part of the first season and then getting into the second season by right around where you're at, Eve, as far as episode 2, episode 3, where I really started to go, okay, I think I actually like these characters. I think I actually like the story that is being woven together here, and it just grew on me. And I think that's probably accurate for a lot of folks. I know certainly Jonah Marie with Rebels Chat was in love from the very first preview that came out, and she was all in. Yeah. But as far as Star Wars storytelling, we have been treated to something special for 4 seasons. There's no doubt about it. Carl, let me jump to you real quick. As far as this finale, do you feel that it was a fitting finale when you compare it to some other television series that have been popular over the course of their run and have had that single finale? And for those that kind of are aficionados of television, we look at series like MASH. Yeah. We look at things like the Newhart Show. We look at things like the Mary Tyler Moore Show. Things that had like these epic finales that just did a great job bringing everything to a close, putting it in a nice bow, and giving it as a gift to viewers. Cheers is another great episode.
Yeah, that was a good one.
And so where would you kind of rate this as far as finale itself?
Well, I liked it a lot, and I kind of look at finales in 3 different categories, and my least favorite is something that leaves it up to the imagination or doesn't really bring anything to a close. And Lost comes to mind, Sopranos comes to mind. Those things, those are the episodes that I don't like. The audience has invested a lot, and you can tell them to go use their imagination about further adventures or things going on.
Right.
But close something, bring some kind of closure. So I did. It's definitely not in that category. The second category is something that sort of it lets you know that things are going on. It doesn't leave it up in the air or leaves confusion. It just says, hey, these you've got to peek in a little window of time here, but these people are still going to continue their lives. You're not going to see the whole thing.
Right.
And I think of Cheers in that category and things like that. But the ones I like the most are ones that give you some sort of definitive answer about a big question that's been going on. Yeah. So, MASH is a good one. But even with MASH, back in the day, the neat thing about finales now is, television in the 60s, 70s, 80s was a lot more episodic. And so MASH was an episodic show. There wasn't a line that carried through like, oh, well, what's going to happen that next week?
Great point.
But you did love the characters.
Right.
And so we had to say goodbye to them. And we saw some growth with I remember Charles Emerson Winchester III,
right.
Kind of showing that he had a heart and he could, that he wasn't just upper crust and not care about other people,
right.
but he was really moved by the tragedy of the war on poor people and things like that. And how hard it is to say goodbye with Hawkeye and BJ and then that shot of goodbye and the rock.
So you liked MASH.
Right.
I liked
Thank you for the play-by-play.
All right, but anyway, I think of things like, the shows now like Battlestar Galactica sticks out in my mind. It had a good reason for the ending. They were looking for Earth. They didn't find the Earth they were looking for, but the one they found ends up being our Earth, and we're descendants of them. So, they brought all that to a close, and it had a good place to end. They were going to continue, but that was a good enough point to kind of sum up for us. All that to say that, we wanted to know what was going on in the fall. How are these characters going to survive, or what are they going to do going into the rebellion and the Death Star and those eras of those first trilogy movies? And we got a really good answer of why they're not here, yet they completed a mission of saving this at least one planet from the Empire.
Yeah. Great point. Barb, what about you from your perspective? In the list of finales wrapping up a series, where would you place this as far as if you were giving it, I guess, a grade of 1 Death Star for mediocre up to 5 Death Stars for superior?
I definitely put it up there with 5. I agree a lot with what Carl's saying. When you're looking at a finale of a series, you want You want some sort of closure. You want some answers. But the difference with Star Wars when we're comparing to these other series is Star Wars is part of a much bigger thing.
That's a great point.
So we want closure, we want answers, but which I think Rebels did really well with is leave it open-ended in some way that stories can be carried on, whether it be in the movies, in books between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens and beyond, and other stories. We're talking about other animated series. And that was where I think Dave Filoni had the challenge. We need to close this series, answer the questions that the fans need, but leave it open enough for more stories to come out of the Star Wars universe. And I think he put the best bow on it that he could. So it's up there.
I think a lot of people would agree with you. Jeremy, let me ask you this. Let me change the question just a little bit. You know, when it comes to finales of a series, they have, in some varying degrees, become an event unto themselves, right? And I think that that's probably a lot of pressure, not just for fans, but certainly for the creative team behind it. Has there been an animated series that people have been so wrapped up about what the finale was going to be like? I can't think of one offhand. That doesn't mean that there isn't one, but as far as I look at some of the more classic animated series that I grew up with, and a lot of those were just one-offs, right? I mean, we think of like the classic, whether it's Tom and Jerry or Scooby-Doo, like there's no common thread other than, well, in Scooby-Doo's case, a bunch of stone teenagers looking for somebody in a mask, but also known as my high school years. But I mean, what is there any other, I guess, running series where animated that people say, oh my gosh, I have to find out what's going on here and pour everything into that?
The only ones that come to my mind immediately are like Avatar,
okay,
Legend of Korra, like those shows. A lot of people, I haven't watched them. A lot of people,
you gotta watch those.
I know, I need to. But a lot of people talk about those as being must-watch animated television. And so those jump out to mind just in terms of what I've heard. But no, I mean, it's hard because I haven't really paid a huge amount of attention, but because I'm a Star Wars fan, I've paid attention to Clone Wars, I've paid attention to Rebels. But yeah, I would point to those as being something that people tend to, in the fandom of anime, point to. So,
I think that's a great point. Eve, as far as, you know, you've got a kiddo at home, and I think she's probably had varying levels of interest with Star Wars Rebels. What are some things that you would hope that, as you're watching this and growing to love these characters, hope that she would really cling to?
For me, kind of paying attention to my daughter and how she's growing up in the world and what she's comfortable with and what she's not. I think their sense of courage and just that determination to follow through with doing what's right. And being there for each other. Because my child was born with a little bit of a fear chip on her shoulder. So when she goes into situations, she hesitates a lot. And I try to kind of, you know, guide her, like, you know, what's the worst that could happen? They could say no. Or, you know, but so watching a show like this, and even the small amount of episodes that I've been a part of so far, I could definitely see that that's a thread I would love to have her take away from it.
I think that's one of the things that really causes us to fall in love with this show and the characters, right? Is that we actually love what they stand up for. I mean, Eve, you bring up a great point. It's the proverbial WWAD. What would Ahsoka do? You know, and we're gonna follow that and have courage because of that. And whether young audience or old audience, we see something in these characters that we either resonate with, or they show us something of where, like other Star Wars characters, that we hope that we would have in times of, you know, great challenge or things like that. Barb, let me come to you. You had mentioned before that, you know, Filoni and the creative team really did a nice job wrapping this up. But what questions were you left with as a viewer and a Star Wars Rebels fan?
Well, on the first viewing, I was so surprised by the way it ended. So I even said to my husband, who was watching it with me, so is Ezra dead? Like, what? I thought when he was saying that this is what I have to do,
right?
That, you know, with the windows broken, that this means that he's gone, becoming a part of the Force, something. But then with the message that he leaves everybody, and then Ahsoka and Sabine going and looking for him after the Battle of Endor. I'm like, okay, where is he? What's going on? And what does this mean for him? And what does it mean for Thrawn's fate?
Right.
So those were the two big questions I had. Not much else. The one thing I do want to comment on, I was really surprised and loved Spectre 7, Jason Syndulla, because again, this opens it up for so many possibilities for a new character.
Yes, but I'll tell you, I'm just having like family ties moments whenever we introduce babies into casts that are already established. It usually doesn't go well.
When did they have sex? Like, that's the thing.
I'm sorry, what?
There's the commercial break.
Sorry, wrong show.
You're talking about Kanan and Hera?
Yeah.
At some point.
Well, I mean, like,
point.
you know, like, and you, Dawn, like, obviously they really dig each other, so they just hadn't proclaimed their love to each other just late one night. Hey,
Yeah,
why
we'll break
not?
that down. What worked? What didn't, Hera? So, Jeremy, let me ask you though, what questions did it leave you with? Obviously, there's the what happened to Ezra, what happened to Thrawn. Baby Jason. What else?
Well, you know, what has Ahsoka been up to? You know, and obviously she stayed out of the game.
Right.
You know, here's someone that could vie for power against the Empire.
Yeah. Great point.
So what happened to her? Let's get a novel. Let's get a show. Tell Ahsoka's story. You know,
she looked so powerful in that last scene.
She did, and you know the staff, the white robes. Like, what has Ahsoka been doing?
Yeah.
You know, how'd she get off the planet? How'd she get away from the Sith temple? And you know, so just lots of questions about a character that is probably one of the of all of Star Wars storytelling in the top 10 easily.
Yeah.
And so you have to, like, what happened to her? And some of the mysteries, the fun, right? And so a lot of questions about her, a lot of questions about where they're going. What I did like, and there's questions, but it's something I liked, is that because they made the jump at the end.
Yeah.
You know, how did the rebellion play out for these characters? Because it seemed to suggest that obviously Zeb and Callus went through the war,
right?
And then they went,
right?
You know, so you know, what did Sabine do during the war? You know, we know a little bit about Hera because they say it. You know, Hera and Rex were at Endor. You know, they were, which is great because I've been wanting like that confirmation of Rex. But yeah, you know, just the you know, the stories that can still be told. And I loved that. I love that they made the jump and like we see where they end up, but we know that they're a part of that. Again, Ahsoka, because she's so powerful, you know, what was she up to? What was she doing? What was she learning? Why didn't she get involved?
Right.
And I think it has something to do with affecting the time or, you know, like obviously there's 2 years that something like 2 years that she doesn't, maybe it's a year where she doesn't get involved because
we don't know.
She doesn't want to mess with the timeline. Right. But, you know, and as far as Jason goes, does Luke train him? Is he one of the students, you know, that is killed by Kylo? Yeah. You know, I my mind
he's
immediately
around the same age as Kylo, a little older.
He's a little bit older, but like, is this one of the people at the temple? Does he become a Knight of Ren? Like,
wow.
Like, there's a lot of canon implications with obviously with Ahsoka, but with Jason too. Like, you know, does Hera go and say, "Train my boy"? Like his dad was a Jedi Knight. Right. You know, like, I can't wait to see, because you can't just leave that sitting out there.
Well, that becomes part of the question, right? It's like, at what point do we say, we're going to leave it mystery? Like you said, that's part of the fun. Stuff for, you know, people in their midlife crises to discuss on a podcast. and at the same time, like, no, we want to see connective tissue. We want to see stuff like that. You know, whether it's him becoming a Knight of Ren or being trained by Luke or whatever. Like, we want to see that connective tissue, I think.
What happens? We do.
It doesn't need to be a Skywalker blood for us to appreciate how the story fits together.
Yeah, and you know, I think the big question is, like, you know, it's Ezra.
Right.
You know, so many great things happen with this character in this finale.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, Devin, you and I talked about today at work just the temptation that he faces.
Right.
And
powerful scene.
Overcoming that. Right. And just what a beautiful sequence.
Yeah.
And so just some excellent storytelling that makes us love these characters more, that makes us want to know more, ask more questions.
Yeah.
So it's good stuff.
I loved that the scene where he does overcome, and then I did a very similar thing to you, and I watched the first 2 episodes today.
Yeah.
And to see Ezra at that point and know that he matures so much as a Jedi to the point that he's tempted by the Emperor with the worst temptation you can have. Like, I don't think there's anything that could have tempted him more than what the Emperor put in front of him.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And he was able to withstand, like, he's good. There's nothing else that would tempt him beyond that.
And I've heard a lot of podcasters, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about this, but like, it makes you, when you juxtapose, because do you guys remember just a lot of comparisons to Anakin to Ezra?
Sure.
Especially at the beginning of season 3. Because he had the holocron, a lot of people were like, "Oh, he's going to go bad, and then he's going to die," you know, and that's what everyone was thinking, you know. And what's so interesting is that he didn't give in to a lot of the temptations. There's a lot of similar ones that they both face, and Ezra doesn't give in to them where Anakin does. And I've heard a lot of podcasters and writers and just thoughtful people just say, and it's a theme that I'm sure you heard at the screening and all that, just family.
Yeah.
He has a family. It's not like necessarily biological, but he has a family. And poor Anakin had Obi-Wan, who wasn't around much. And in the Jedi Temple, like, he didn't have the love.
No, that's a great point.
You know, I wonder if that's something to explore later, you know, maybe in a closer look. But like, that's a really interesting concept idea, to look at Anakin giving into temptation. And looking at Ezra avoiding it and pushing it away. I find that incredibly compelling storytelling.
Yeah, and Barbie bring up a great point. I mean, Palpatine knew his soft spot, right?
Yeah.
He knew what to go for. And I think that mirrors what we see in Return of the Jedi with Luke in a lot of ways, right?
Yep.
And in very similar paths, that they're faced with their great temptation, either saving friends or going back to his biological family. And in both cases, you know, they rise above and say no. Yeah,
and Yoda says, wars not make one great.
Right.
And, you know, here you see these Jedi be great Jedi because they don't give in. You know, and there's even a moment in Clone Wars where Satine is murdered by Maul.
Right.
And you're expecting Obi-Wan to, like, get revenge. But it's this profound sadness. But Obi-Wan doesn't, he's a Jedi.
Right.
You know, and he's not going to, like, wreak havoc. You know, he's going to be who he is. You know, he's devoted to being. And just some interesting concepts and ideas there. Yeah.
Carl, jump in here. What are some of the questions that you were left with beyond what we've talked about so far?
Well, I'm wondering where the Twi'lek DNA is in Jason, because I didn't see one Laku or anything. I mean, he looked totally human, so I was kind of questioning that. You know, he had some green hair. I was about to, so but you know, I think everybody covered the bigger mysteries as far as, or just the things we're wanting to know. You know, what's the adventures with Thrawn, and I guess to kind of add to what you talked about with Thrawn, what I think Jeremy was talking about. You know, Thrawn in the animated series Rebels and the book is slightly different. It's not huge. It's not a chasm. It's not something you can't get over, but he seemed a little more resistant to killing and a little more sympathetic. He was only doing what he had to do to get ultimately to his goal of getting the Emperor, or whatever the Emperor knew, to help back in the wild space areas, where he seemed more just dead set on killing these, you know, people in Rebels. So if he's really just doing that to have a way of saving his people back where they're from, I wonder if he somehow makes some sort of peace with Ezra and uses him, because I believe they're going to be out somewhere in wild space. It's kind of mentioned in Aftermath, Empire's End, that he's out there sending signals to the Emperor. So I just kind of wonder if they make some sort of, you know, as Jeremy's mentioned about how Jedis are not going to wreak havoc, and how there's some forgiveness or pity that Obi-Wan shares with Maul, that if Ezra overcome, you know, his desire maybe to hate or to dislike or get even with Thrawn, and actually work out some sort of peace with him. So I'd be curious to see how that played out.
I think that leads into one of my questions that I'm left with, and not so much like what happens to Thrawn, but I'll take a derivative of that and say, like, this character can't be dead, right?
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Like, no, I just need confirmation, please.
He's placed in he's ready to do the heir to the Empire story.
Right.
You know, he's out in the unknown regions, wild space, whatever. We don't know.
Right.
But, you know, he's out there. Actually, I guess we do know. I can't remember. And Carl, you just mentioned it. Does the book say he's in the unknown regions, or?
You talk about it in the Heir of the Empire or back in the
no. Like, so in canon, Thrawn is mentioned being somewhere, and I don't know if
Aftermath.
Remember, it's Aftermath. Empire is in when they're getting in the ships on Jakku, and they're going to head out to wild space. You know, Hux is just a boy. Brindle's in charge, but Armitage is in charge. Hux is just a boy. And they're all going out that way, and they've been getting telemetry and information from. They say Thrawn, sent back to them from wild space, uncharted regions, and so he's out there. He's mentioned that way, so that's why I'm saying I'm assuming they got there, and from the Thrawn book, I'm assuming, that's where he came from, and his whole goal was to get technology and things to help his people back to that area. He sent Eli Vanto to help his people, so I'm wondering if he somehow works something out with Ezra.
I have to figure out that timeline. Yeah, that's really tricky. But again, like we have this sort of like they mention Captain Pelion, who's his buddy in Heir to the Empire trilogy,
right?
And so in Rebels, so you see him back in canon now. It was just really fun. But you have the setup for some similar stuff, like the Return of Thrawn,
right?
So it's pretty cool,
right? Well, and we're gonna get a Thrawn book out. Not
this summer,
too
July.
far down the road. We'll hopefully maybe have some answers with that and see if there's some connective tissue there. Let me ask this as we continue to go forward. You hear that?
What's that flashing?
Great shot, kid. That was 1 in a million. One in a million.
I got a bad feeling about this.
All right, it is time for this week's round of Great Shot or Bad Feeling, the game that keeps on giving. For those of you who are tuning in for the first time, here's how the game works. I'm going to give our panelists a scenario, and they're going to respond with either Great Shot if they agree or they like the statement, or Bad Feeling if they disagree or do not like the statement. So here we go, panelists. Let's play Great Shot or Bad Feeling. Scenario number 1. Jeremy, we'll begin with you. Okay. Ahsoka lives. Great shot, bad feeling.
Great shot.
Eve.
Great shot.
Carl.
Great shot.
Barb.
Great shot.
Wow. All right. This is too easy. All right. Eve, this time we're going to begin with you. Great shot or bad feeling. Ahsoka and Sabine spinoff.
No, great shot.
Carl.
Yes.
Great shot.
Barb.
Great shot.
Jeremy?
Great shot.
Wow.
This is easy.
Man. All right. Here we go. Carl, we'll begin with you this time. Great shot or bad feeling. It's confirmed Rex is now part of canon in Return of the Jedi. Great shot, bad feeling.
It's a great shot, and Jeremy gets some redemption from somebody who's maybe, a little bit higher in the echelon.
I can't believe you remember that. I got trashed on Twitter for saying that a while back. So,
did you really?
Yeah.
Wow. Feel the power.
Yes.
All right. Well, in that case, I'm going to guess you're going to go with
Great shot.
Great shot. Barb?
Great shot.
Eve?
Great shot.
Oh, my gosh. This is pathetic. All right. Here we go. Great shot, bad feeling. Let's see. Barb, we'll begin with you. Portals. Portals. Not Purgles. Portals.
Oh, I have so many questions.
Cool. What I'm looking for is an answer.
Never answer a question with a question.
Great shot.
All right. Jeremy.
I have that hesitation like Barb, but I'm going to say great shot.
Eve.
Great shot.
Carl.
Great shot, and I just want to say because there's so much more to Lothal. It makes Vader saying the Force is more powerful than this Death Star a little more important in A New Hope.
Yeah.
And so all these different things that add to, and even now not now, but the Emperor was looking for something deeper under the Jedi Temple in Coruscant. So all that stuff adds more to the Force side of the legacy than the technology side. So for all those reasons, I say great shot.
Okay. Well, thank you for completely supporting it and citing your sources. I appreciate that. Next time, please use MLA format. Let's go to our next one. Great shot, bad feeling. Jeremy, Ezra's, using air quotes here, ending.
Oh, great shot. Yeah, great shot.
Eve.
Great shot.
Sounds like she saw it.
I know. Wow.
I've heard enough.
It's like I was there. Barb.
Great shot.
Carl.
Great shot. I would elaborate, but I think
I was waiting for it. Thank you. We're moving on. All right. Thrawn's quote unquote ending. Great shot, bad feeling. Carl.
great shot.
Jeremy.
Biggest debates over this one, but I'm going to say great shot.
Barb.
Yeah, I'm with Jeremy. Great shot, but I want to elaborate.
Eve.
I feel indifferent, but I don't want to go against the grain. So great
Oh
shot.
my gosh!
Stay with the tribe.
Just like hug
Stay
a tree
with the
and
tribe.
eat some granola. This is ridiculous. Singing Kumbaya on this week's episode.
Calm down, everybody. Levin's got a show to go. Come on, everybody.
Oh my gosh! All right, great shot, bad feeling. Eve, will begin with you. Kanan and Hera's love child.
This is the first time I'm hearing about it tonight. So great shot.
Well, I think there's a little bit more to your answer than I want to admit right now. Barb, great shot or bad feeling?
I loved it. Great
All right.
shot.
Love child. Jeremy.
Great shot.
Oh, man. Okay. Carl.
Bad feeling.
Oh, okay. I'm going to let you qualify your answer. Go.
You can elaborate.
Are you sure? I don't want to, spend too much time. No, it's just, you talked about it earlier. When you add a different character like that, sometimes it seems to be just to, hit a button instead of really thought out as far as a good reason.
No, it was
why.
thought out.
So,
It was more than hitting a button.
It's Brian Bonsell. It's Brian Bonsell.
I don't know what that.
That's the kid actor that came into Family Ties that completely blew it.
Oh, the blonde?
Yeah.
Wait, what's your answer?
Andrew?
yeah,
Great shot or bad feeling?
I'm going to
Devin?
go bad feeling.
Well,
Really?
I'm going to go bad feeling.
I liked him.
You saw him for 3 seconds. How do you know?
I'm talking about the Family Ties.
You're talking about Brian Bonsell. No, he wrecked that show.
No, he didn't.
Come on.
His Alex Keaton's relationship with him was
It's Alex P. Keaton, first of all.
Okay, come back to Star Wars.
All right,
Leave
coming
Family
back
Ties.
to Star Wars.
And there's still that timing thing that Jeremy mentioned earlier about like when exactly, maybe the
Sure.
Oh,
They got drunk
Sure.
one night. Like we'll come up with some
TMI,
fan fiction
okay?
for this.
Just assume it.
Wow.
She did touch her stomach at the beginning of that episode when Ezra's talking to the picture of his family, so they kind of gave you a little hint at the beginning.
Really?
Wow. If
Wow,
that's
that's
true,
observant.
Carl Hassler, I will be so impressed.
I was wondering when I was trying to think back. I'm like, okay, did she make any notice? And I didn't notice it.
Wait. Well, hold on. Let's
About
pause.
When
pause,
he
pause.
look- when he looks up at- when she looks up at
saying,
Ezra.
Mama, Dad, wish you'd met my new family and everything. And as she's coming up under the ladder to talk to him, she touches her stomach.
Carl, if that's true, I'm going to create a fake Twitter account and follow you on Twitter.
I might break 100.
All right. Let's see. Eve, let's begin with you. Great shot, bad feeling. The return of the Purrgil. Space whales.
I don't know. Great shot.
Said with authority. Carl, space whales. Great shot, bad feeling.
What'd you say?
Carl.
Oh, me. I'm sorry. I didn't hear my name. Bad feeling. That's the one thing about Star Wars. In anything, I don't like living creatures. I don't like the space Leviathan at the end of the Han Solo trailer.
Wow. All right. I don't like living creatures. All right.
Out in space.
The most
without kind of-
fabulous epitaph ever. Barb, space whales. Great shot, bad feeling.
There's no middle ground, so great shot.
Okay.
Great shot.
Great shot.
Yeah.
All right. I like them. I dig space whales.
I'm down.
I'm down. All right. Okay, here's one that actually I think I'm a little bothered with.
Ooh.
Oh, I see now I've poisoned the well now. But
Yeah.
all right, great shot, bad feeling. Barb, I'll begin with you. We don't have any particular mention of the Battle of Scarif.
Well, you just threw that out of left field.
So the timeline, how's that work?
Well, it would happen right
Before.
after they got Lothal back.
Yeah.
That'd be the next thing.
Yeah.
So you're just saying no mention of it.
We skip over Scarif and go straight to Endor.
Yeah.
Well, then we skipped over a whole bunch of stuff.
Right, but we see the ghost in Rogue One. So I guess that's my thing. We see the ghost in Rogue One.
Are you saying the issue is no mention of?
Yeah, exactly. Like did you want to have mention of Scarif?
They talk about the entire war. You've got the Battle of Yavin that they skipped over too. Are we going to be nitty gritty?
But we don't see the ghost at the Battle of Yavin.
Okay, so.
So you're saying like mentioning of at the end,
correct?
Like Endor, Scarif,
correct? Yeah. I didn't realize it was that complicated of a question. I apologize.
It's very complicated.
I think I'm indifferent. I don't see a big
Barb,
deal out
great
of it.
shot, bad feeling.
Play by his rules.
Great shot.
It was a great shot. They didn't mention it. Oh my god!
All
right.
I said I'm indifferent.
She's frustrated.
Around,
Thanks for starting with me on the most controversial question.
Carl, great shot. What?
Great shot.
Oh my gosh. What podcast am I on right now? Eve.
Star Wars.
What me? Bad feeling.
Bad feeling.
I've got a bad feeling too, but it has nothing to do with the question. Jeremy.
Great shot.
Moving on.
Yes.
All right. You know what? That's it. That's it. We're going to our closer look segment.
Okay.
Stick around. Stick around, people.
I'm going in closer to one of the big ones.
Hello, son. The closer I have than you.
A certain point of view.
Same thing I always do, talk my way out of it.
The ability to speak does not make you intelligent.
I never asked that question till after I've done it.
You're going to find that many of the truths we cling to depend greatly on our own point of view.
All right, we are coming back with our closer look topic tonight. And of course, we're asking the question, what will the legacy of Star Wars Rebels be? Is it going to be something that we love and go back to about what a great addition to lore and the story that was, or will it be forgotten? And before we jump too far into this, let's first go to our very scientific Twitter poll. The question, of course, what will the legacy of Star Wars Rebels be to the greater Star Wars story and lore? 72% of the folks said it will be an essential part of canon. 23% said it'll have some memorable things. And there are 6% out there that said that Star Wars Rebels will be forgotten over time. So let's jump into this talking about where and how is this going to impact the overall lore and story of Star Wars. Let's begin with the macro view. Barb, what is your Rebels moment? That point where it really just kind of reached in and said, ooh, I'm in. I'm pushing all my chips into the middle of the table.
Twilight of the Apprentice.
That's a tough one to beat. Jeremy?
Season 1, Rise of the Old Masters was when I pushed the chips in. I said I'm on board.
Okay.
Yeah.
Carl?
I like Twilight of the Apprentice, but I think when Tarkin came to town and there was the Inquisitor did this off-camera double decapitation of the bumbling idiots, I was like, ooh, this has gotten a little more serious.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Yeah.
I remember that. Yeah.
Eve, even though you're binge watching it, among your binge there, which I guess element has really said, not only am I binging this, but I'm binging it with pride and satisfaction?
The future of the Force with Ahsoka coming in to save them. That gave me chills.
Yeah.
I don't know.
The Inquisitors.
I don't think there hasn't been a time that Ahsoka has appeared where it has been just amazing.
Yeah, from her first appearance that in season 1,
yeah.
Like everything's just been great.
Yeah. I think I'm going to have to go, Barb, I'm going to agree with you. I think Twilight of the Apprentice was just so cinematic for me that it was just, I'm no longer just watching as a casual fan or out of sense of podcast obligations, but I'm like, I want to see what's going to happen next.
Yeah, the cinematography in an animated show was phenomenal in that.
Absolutely. Have you had any of those other moments? Jeremy, let me come to you with this. No. Have you had any of those other moments, or maybe what are some of those other moments you've had with books or comics or even some of the films Star Wars related? Films, I think is probably where we all began. So from written stuff, books, comics? Was there something that also said, ooh, I really want to know more about this character, this situation, because of how it's written?
Not new characters. So, for example, like there's a moment in Lords of the Sith where, I can spoil it, I guess, but like Palpatine and Vader are kind of side by side fighting, and it's a if you've read the novel, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That was such a, you know how there's action, and it's not really telling the story; it's just action.
Yeah.
This was, as these two characters fought, they're telling the story, their tension between one another, master and apprentice, and the rule of two, and there were some moments where it just made me more invested in knowing more about their relationship. So, I mean, for me, it was that moment. Paul Kemp just did a great job. Of the novels, that's actually a huge one for me. So, I mean, off the top of my head, that's one for me.
Yeah. Carl, how about you? Are there some other things out there that you just have those light bulb moments where you just said, ooh, yes, I'm now all in with whatever it is, the comic book, whatever it is?
Yeah. When the original Zahn trilogy with that it brought in Thrawn.
Yeah.
And that was a time when there was just a desert of any kind of new Star Wars material. So we'd had the movies, and that was about it. You had comics and things, but you know, something of more substance. Those novels, you just sort of, you know, we were starving for something like that, and it was so good too. So that Thrawn, bringing Thrawn out, and really, even though he was a bad guy, brought it really interested in that character.
Good point. Eve, how about you?
I think you're going to appreciate this. Learning about Phasma's homeworld, Parnassus. Phasma. I think just the desolation and what she had to endure to get where she ultimately ended up was just, it was badass.
And here I go on my diatribe. I'm going Carl. But there's such a juxtaposition of Phasma in written form and film form that I just almost can't stand it. I really can't. I just almost cannot stand it's two split characters. Barb, what about you?
Bloodline.
Really?
Oh, good call.
Yeah.
It was my introduction into really reading a novel for Star Wars, and Claudia Gray just did such a phenomenal job. And there's some scenes in that book that they took me out of being a reader and put me into watching a movie. I think I said this when Jeremy and I were talking about the book, that I felt like I was watching this movie on screen. Excuse me. So that was it for me.
Yeah. Carl, you really said something that resonated with me, and that is kind of either rekindling fandom or keeping fandom alive during those desolate Tatooine years of fandom when nothing was coming out. And honestly, for me, it was the X-Wing PC game.
Oh, the PC game.
The PC game, X-Wing. And that was mind-blowing graphics at the time, right? And then they followed it up with TIE Fighter, and it was just like, I felt like my fandom was just like refueled at that point.
Yeah, that's a good call.
It was amazing.
Those were fun.
And the Dark Forces, too, was a great addition to that. Let me ask this then. You know, talking more Rebels-centric, when it comes to those characters that it doesn't necessarily mean we'd want to see them in a standalone film or even a book, but when it comes to the characters and you go, oh, I really resonate or appreciate that character. Eve, who are you finding to be a character that you're really saying, I want to follow that character, I want to know more about that character?
Initially it was Sabine, and I still really am digging her character, and I'm excited to see the evolution through the next 2.5 seasons, but Ahsoka. There's every time she comes on the scene on the show, she just steals it and steals my attention, and I'm just like, what is she doing? What's she gonna do? Where'd she come from? So definitely her.
Do you think, and I'll just throw this out generally, do you think that she steals more scenes in Rebels than any other character? What are you guys' thoughts on that?
Wow. Everybody has moments. You know, great moments, epic moments.
But does she have any bad moments, though? Does she have any moments where it's like, nah?
In Rebels, no.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty incredible to say.
Yeah. She, and she's the big game player.
Right.
Like, you put her on the board, and all your attention is drawn to her.
Right.
And there's so much history with her, and obviously the Twilight of the Apprentice moment is such a big deal.
Right.
But, You know, and just think about it. She was in season 1 at the end, here and there in season 2, and then 4.
Yeah.
Like for an episode, and then a brief 5 seconds, maybe?
Yeah.
And she's had such an impact.
Yep.
And you just have to wonder, I think fandom is just really clamoring for something more from this character. Like, you know, we want more.
Go ahead,
the
Carl.
Animators, the way they draw her too, she's got such a stature that she's just imposing. Especially that last image that you already mentioned. But she's the only person who probably stands as straight as her is Thrawn. But she just, you know, you think about when you first saw her in the Clone Wars movie, and then through the Clone Wars. But how, you know, she was a child and she has grown and matured, and then she just sort of stands and commands a presence with, you know, just her physical presence too. So I think they do it. That just makes it her. You know, she didn't say anything in that last scene, but she was just imposing.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that. Carl, what about it? Is Ahsoka the character that you would say that you most resonate with or appreciate the most in Rebels, or do you have another pick?
Ahsoka's a good pick. She's probably the first person that I saw go into a fight with Darth Vader and think she had a chance, you know, in any way. So that brought me around to her because, you know, from a long time ago, she wasn't my favorite. That really cemented her being very, you know, the gravitas that she carries. But I'll also say Sabine too, especially the whole Darksaber story arc there. Just, you know, I watched that episode several times because I was actually doing reviews at that time, and you know, it brought tears the way it was acted, and the whole, you know, the moment of a character moment instead of just action. So I'd say Sabine.
That's a great pick. Barb?
It's hard to disagree with everything that's said. Like, I agree with everything, but if we're gonna, one character that isn't in it a lot, but every time he is the Bendu. That, like, he was something new to Rebels, introduced in Rebels, and at a time right after Twilight of the Apprentice when Kanan had lost his sight. And he just had this impact in season 3 that it was really cool to see a being with the Force that was different, you know, not light, not dark, and trying to show that there's balance, that you don't have to pick a side, but you can. It was he had a very interesting arc.
I love that pick, especially what it brought to canon, and it's interesting that one of the things that Dave Filoni had said. Did I mention I was sitting down with Dave Filoni last week? I don't know if I mentioned that or not, but one of the things that Dave Filoni said last week was that, you know, and we'll talk about this in a future episode because it actually like blew my mind. He goes, you know, everything that we need to know about the Force is in the films.
When I was listening to that, he had such good insights. He's like, because he said everything we need to know about the Force, George has already done for us.
Right.
I was like, wow. That insight. And yet you've taken Rebels into interesting story arcs that I never thought the Force could go in.
Yeah, we never considered it as an option.
Yeah.
And I think that's brilliant. So I love that pick. I think for me, gosh, Ahsoka's the easy answer, right? I think you just you cannot not like that character and what she brings, whether it's just her persona and what she brings to the quote-unquote good guys or what she means for little girls and women as far as fandom goes. There's something that I found super compelling as I grew with the character, and that's Kanan. I just think that he became much more like Obi-Wan, like Qui-Gon, as far as understanding and appreciation of the Force, his willingness to understand sacrifice and timing and all those things. And I just really fell in love with that character. I thought it was phenomenal. Let me ask you guys this, though, because when we were watching the finale in the theater, it was interesting when there was a couple characters that appeared and the crowd went wild. And I thought, how fascinating is this? And one of those characters was Hondo. And people went absolutely nuts for him. So, Jeremy, you're saying yes. Is that somebody that you personally resonate with as a character?
Not necessarily resonating. I enjoy immensely.
And what is it about it that you enjoy?
Well, it's interesting. His story has been pretty interesting, and to hear people's perspectives on Hondo. I always found him in Clone Wars to be sort of like not scary, but like there's no way I would trust this guy.
Yeah,
you know.
Right.
And there was an edge to him, and a lot of people said that Hondo didn't jive with the Rebels Hondo. The Clone Wars Hondo didn't like fit with with Rebels, and so it's fascinating. I don't really have a dog in the fight, you know.
Right.
Like, I don't really care that much about but it's interesting how. There was he was softer, and a lot of people will say in Rebels because he had fallen on hard times and he didn't have that swagger that he had at one point.
Right.
I find that a viable answer to that issue of like the character's different now.
Sure.
But there is a playfulness of fun. He got the biggest laughs out of that finale, out of me. Like, you know, especially when he's counting how many times he's been in a shipping lane and he's been hit, you know, 1, 2, and then he just kept going. And I thought that was great. So I think we need the pirates, you know, and we can't call him a smuggler. You know, we need these pirates, and they add so much flavor to Star Wars. He's funny.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I mean, that's it for me. You know?
Yeah.
So,
What about some of the rest of you? Eve, Carl, Barb, jump in here. Was there anything that you want to add to that as far as a fan's appreciation for Hondo? Okay, thanks.
Crickets. Chirp, chirp.
I was waiting for you to finish the sentence. Like, which character? Go ahead, Eve.
No, I like him. He's unpredictable, and I like his humor so far.
Yeah,
I think including him helped. I'm sorry, Barb. Go ahead.
No, you're good.
Okay, I was just including him and others. It was like Jeremy alluded to. He's not somebody you would trust, and he's backstab people. But in this time in our culture now, we need to see people who don't necessarily see eye to eye getting along to accomplish something. And so bringing all those different characters back that helped out in the end. There were all times where they sort of were not trustworthy or turned the other one in or did something to advance themselves at others' expense. But then to see basically coming back to Ezra saying that boy has, you know, like he's the spark of the rebellion sort of in that first season. Right. He's lit something in all of us that we will come together and do it for him because of who he is, and we will overcome our differences to accomplish good.
And you landed on it. I think that says so much about Ezra in this story. Yeah. This is Ezra's story, and you know, I remember distinctly just kind of the chatter when it concerned Rebels, especially after the Twilight of the Apprentice episode, that okay, Ezra's going to go dark.
Yeah.
You know, he's going to be bad, and Kanan's going to have to kill him. Yeah. You know, like so many people said that. Right. And that wasn't his journey. And think about, I don't even know how to qualify who he is, but one of the things, he was this peacemaker with creatures.
Right.
He had empathy toward the plight of so many.
Right.
From the beginning. And, you know, and he cared about all these different creatures. It's what saves Lothal, his connection with the Purrgil, you know. Right. He connects with all these people, Hondo, you know, of course, the Ghost Crew. What a great, and Carl, you nailed it. Like, what a great message to people to see a hero really see the best in others, and because of that, it brings out the best in them. You know, and they say, you know, I'm going to do whatever it takes for this boy,
right?
Because in a sense, he loved me,
right.
And it's a pretty good message.
And I thought that was super intriguing to see Hondo, that we go from someone that's like, we cannot trust him, to he's the one making the speech that's like right out of Jyn Erso's playbook, as far as like, no, we're going to do this, and we're going to do this for the boy, on behalf of the boy. I found that so intriguing and so compelling at the same time.
I thought it was really good too that in the last episode he had this counterpart with Belch, and it kind of gave him a bit of a soft side, showing, you know, his care for somebody.
Yeah.
It was just an interesting side of him.
Yeah, I agree. Let me ask this, though, kind of on a similar note. When it came to some of the cameos throughout the episodes of Rebels, we've got Leia, we've got Tarkin, we've got Wedge, Lando. Was there a cameo that you would say was your most favorite cameo? I guess we could even throw Vader in there as a cameo. He kind of came and went. Carl, when it comes to the cameos that some of these legacy characters, for better ways to describe them, came in and out, what were your thoughts on that, Obi-Wan?
And look, that's what I was going to go with.
Yeah.
It was good, and it's part of the reason that this show does have a permanent place is because it is bringing, is tying up ends and bringing all these different eras and movies together. And so what's going on during the meantime of things that we didn't see in the movies, and I just having Obi-Wan there and looking over Luke, I thought that was just a great little moment and allowed Obi-Wan to have closure with Maul. And it was an awesome episode. If somebody told me, well, I don't want to spoil it for Eve, close your ears, but
close your eyes.
Somebody said, close your eyes. Somebody said, hey, we're gonna sum this thing up and we're gonna spend a lot of time, and all we're really gonna do is have like 3 moves of the lightsaber and it's over. I'm like, well, that doesn't sound very interesting, but it was beautiful when they did it.
Yeah.
And so I love that episode.
Yeah, good call.
Yeah.
Jeremy, what about you?
It was good to see Saw.
Yeah.
And kind of connect, his journey as a character and kind of his brokenness, which what a broken character Saw Gerrera is. So I enjoyed seeing him show up, several times that he did. I really enjoyed the Leia episode a lot. It was good to see her at that point in her life. Whenever you get a Skywalker, it's fun, and so it was great to see that episode. So those are the two that really stood out to me. There's tons. I mean, and you can kind of like debate on what a cameo is, but
sure.
But I really enjoy the Saw episodes, connecting Rogue One to Rebels, and and then obviously the Leia episode.
Yeah. Good call, Barb.
Well, there's, as Jeremy was saying, there's so many, and mine are Obi-Wan in Twin Sons, and just rewatching some of the early ones, Bail Organa. When they return the droids to him.
Can't go wrong with Jimmy Smits.
Yeah, and just some of the lines he has, and he kneels down in front of R2, and he's like, okay, let's see what you've gotten here on this rebel cell.
Right. Eve, let me come to you on this. And again, we understand you're working your way through it, so you may have not seen all the cameos, but certainly we've spoiled a bunch for you at this point. Either someone that stood out to you thus far, or now that you've kind of heard some of the other options, one that you're looking forward to the most?
Oh, well, I've just passed the episode with Leia, and that was so fun. So I mean, and I actually tweeted that. I just wrote Leia in caps with a bunch of exclamation points because I was just so genuinely excited to see her. So that wins for me. I'm definitely excited for Saw and Obi-Wan, and I'm trying not to pay too much attention. So I'm not super spoiled, but them too for now.
Yeah, I think that the Princess Leia integration into Rebels was well done. It didn't feel like, hey, we're just going to throw this character in there. And I think for the most part, most of the characters felt well represented in there. I for me personally, and this comes to no surprise, that the brief moment we have with Obi-Wan, I think, was just so beautifully done and so powerful on so many levels that if you were going to bring that character back into the game, what a way to do it. What a way to do it. Let me ask this then. Here we are. We're on Disney XD. We're got an animated Star Wars series that is on a kids channel that is geared for kids, but yet they obviously had to straddle the divide of being on a kids channel, doing an animated series. Carl, I believe you mentioned earlier, like we don't necessarily see some of the violence. It's just kind of left to our minds to kind of gather where we're going. But yet they obviously had some stories and some themes and some moments that were very adult and may have even been lost on kids in a lot of ways. So let me ask this. Do you feel that they got it right when it came to straddling the divide between kids channel, kids show, but we also want that adult audience? And if so, why? If you felt that they made some missteps and didn't do a good enough job, where do you feel that they did some of their missteps? And Carl, let me bring you in first on this one.
Okay. I think they did a good job because I think I mentioned before, one of the things that I love about Star Wars is it's something that when I was 6 years old, I shared with my dad. And so, and even Dave Filoni, I think in one of the interviews you had, he talking about how, there weren't any nostalgia people back then, but there were parents who were taking their kids and saying, well, I'm glad there's something I like and my kid likes.
Absolutely.
And
great point.
For the same reason, there are times I watch movies that might be based on characters that the kids might like, but I'm like, well, this might be a little too advanced for them. So I'm, whether it be a, Batman versus Superman or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this, he can watch and enjoy, and I'm not worried about what he's seeing or if it's too early for him to see those things. At the same time, I still get stuff out of it. So I think they did a great balance of where they are. Only thing if there was any misstep, I think what they could have done. And you guys have mentioned Last Airbender and Korra, Legend of Korra earlier. Those are great. If you haven't seen those, watch those. Korra's probably my favorite. It's beautifully animated, but the story is tight, and I think that's what's better is that every episode is serialized to lead to the next one, and there is a whole arc of the story over each season, and the seasons all really kind of go together into one big story. If they could have done these less episodic episodes and still just done a serial where everything was going to lead to the next episode, to ultimate whatever the culmination was, I think that would have made it even more interesting for adults. So that's the only thing I think I would correct.
Okay, bring up some great points there. Barb, you and your kids watch this. How do you feel that they toe the line between keeping adults interested but also gearing it for kids, a younger audience?
I think they did a great job.
Yeah.
My kids watch a lot of different animated shows, and this is the one that keeps my attention. The others, I'm like bored in a couple of minutes, you know? So that tells me right away they've done it well because my kids are enthralled, and I am. And they have enough of, the kid humor, the things that the kids get, and the stuff that we as adults like for the Star Wars story.
Yeah.
Might go over the kid's head here and there, but we're appreciating it and loving it, and it's keeping us coming back for more episodes. So they balance that line perfectly.
Good points. Eve, what about you?
I agree. I think Barb was spot on with that. I think the only thing that I noticed was, and it's my favorite episode so far, is with the Future of the Force. I felt that was super dark. I mean, the Inquisitors were coming to steal children.
Right.
So I was like, I don't know if my kid would get that, but I certainly do. And that was that kind of stuff. I'm not that I'm, like, I don't support stealing children, for the record.
Oh, good. All right. Well, thanks for getting that out there.
Good to know.
There's one vote for that.
It's good to have them kind of themes, the dark themes. So that's what keeps me hooked.
Yeah, that's a great point, because I think that one of the things that we see, whether it's with the Inquisitors or Twilight of the Princess, which we mentioned a couple of times tonight, I mean, those are some pretty heavy episodes. There's no doubt about it. Jeremy, you already talked about your son Sam and his reaction to anything. I mean, anytime the lightsaber effect is used, then like Sam's all in.
Yeah.
What about like your daughters though? And going back to the original question, kind of bridging that gap between young fans and older fans.
It's really interesting. It's hard to, I don't know about you guys, it's hard for me to think of Rebels without thinking of my kids. So in other words, one of the problems I'm having with critiquing it is I watch my kids love it. And I'm like, I need to lighten up, man. I need to not pick this thing apart, you know? And I would say,
sit down, Gene Siskel.
You know what I mean? It's and think about, for me, I have a hard time because of the value of what they're watching. I'm able to talk, I had a long conversation, as long as you can with a 6-year-old, just about sacrifice when Ahsoka pushes, Ezra away in Twilight of the Apprentice and then stays with Vader.
Right.
And also dealing with people that have done evil and she's trying to restore them, and that's a powerful moment. I also just about teaching and learning how Ezra has to get to a humble place to listen to Kanan. Kanan has to loosen up a little bit and soften a little bit. There's such great character arcs and there's such great lessons.
Yeah.
That when I think of Rebels, I agree with Carl that there are some. It would maybe help if it was serialized more, where it's leading into the next one to the next one to the next one, and you have these. and they do that at some points, but in others, there's some standalones, and you're like, okay, why is AP5 singing in the middle of space? Which I actually love, but you have these moments, and you're like, so I get that critique, but because it has provided me a dialogue with my children, it has immense value to me.
Well, I love it. I'm just going to kind of springboard off of something that you said earlier, and that's where I see it in this household, and that is it's an entry point.
It totally is.
It's an entry point, and you mentioned your son Sam and the rewatch value it has, and I think that it does. It may not bridge gaps for old fans and young fans in any other way than it's bringing old fans and young fans together.
Yeah,
which I think is great because it's an opportunity to share in fandom, to pass something on. And as you said, like there are some lessons to be learned through some of the themes that are going on within Star Wars Rebels and the greater Star Wars story. Let me ask this. We had mentioned during our game segment possible spinoff, Ahsoka and Sabine. In fact, when we were in the theater, the first question that Filoni got asked was, when are we getting the Ahsoka and Sabine animated series? So I guess that could be one of our options. Barb, what do you think? We're obviously going to get an animated series. It may be here as soon as next fall. Do you think that it's going to be Ahsoka and Sabine? What other options may be out there that you would find appealing?
I think that we were talking a bit about this off the air before we started. There's a 30-year period between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. That's a huge period for, we've already had novels. We've got all sorts of storylines. And now with the way Rebels has ended, we have more. And I would love to see the animated series touch on that. If Dave Filoni is a part of it, whatever he wants to write about is fine by me. But definitely with the ending that we've had to Rebels, there has to be some kind of story coming out of that, whether it be a novel, an animated series, the live action show. Something has to come out of that. And, as I think about it, I'd love to see it, an animated Sabine, Ahsoka, something.
You bring up several good points. One of the things that really was a lightning moment for me is, can we just give Dave the keys to the castle and just like whatever Dave does, we're good with?
Yeah,
I think one of our friends of the pod actually he had tweeted out today, Dave Filoni, I will follow you anywhere. Rian Johnson, I'll never watch another movie you direct again, Star Wars related or not. And I think that a lot of people would probably identify with that, especially the Dave Filoni part where, he has given us something so special. I'm not taking anything away from developing a film trilogy or even a single installment, but there is something when you've got this 4-year game plan that you're playing out. And Jeremy, you mentioned like serializing it and having this thread through the entire thing. I mean, you and I were talking off air a couple weeks ago. Well, when World Between Worlds came out, and it was like, oh, he's playing the long game. Like, how long has this been, part of the game plan? Is just, it's intriguing to think about what could be with that.
Well, and it was interesting that he said, everything we know about the Force we've been given in the movies.
Right.
Yet he has pushed the elements of that with World Between Worlds, and then in this finale with Palpatine tempting Ezra the way he did.
Right.
Now, we know that he was being tempted, but I'm curious as to what would have happened had he chosen that. Is this a viable option that would have played out, or was he just being tricked by Palpatine? Because if it's a viable option, what is that saying about what the Force can do and what the dark side can do with it?
Yeah. No, I think those are some great questions to think about and come back to at a later time. Eve, what are some of your thoughts on this when it comes to the next animated series that's Star Wars related? Are you clamoring for the Ahsoka Sabine spin-off series? Is it going to be something else? What are some of your thoughts when it comes to that?
I would love an Ahsoka Sabine series. I think I have to go with Barb with the period in between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. I think that just there's so much time and so many characters and so many stories that could be told, which may or may not be a great thing because it could be a never-ending series, which, the fish in what is it, fishing guests after 3 days. But yeah, I think
right.
I think that would be ideal.
Okay. Yeah. Carl, jump in here. What are some of your thoughts about next animated series? Where should we go? Where do you think we might be going?
Well, I love the Ahsoka Sabine, and I think the guy that asked the question was Donald Faison, who played Turk on Scrubs. So I want him doing a voice in that series too. But that's just naturally where he's leading us. Possibly seeing Hera. What's Hera doing? We talked about skipping all the gap of all the way to Endor after the end of Lothal. So could we follow Hera around as what she's doing, almost Life of Brian style, around the during the first trilogy of movies? I mean, that would be interesting, especially if you're thinking about entering points for children. I don't think an Old Republic would do that for kids because that doesn't really mesh with all the other stuff's out there. Although that would be interesting, I think, for really diehard fans.
Sure.
Thank you for bringing Monty Python into the Star Wars podcast. Jeremy, some of your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's natural, right, to say, give us a Sabine, Ahsoka, like Thelma and Louise road trip movie through the galaxy,
right, yes.
And develop different, and then like let us see Ezra again, and Thrawn. Like I think a lot of us go there. I would also say. It was interesting. I was Sam and I finished the episode this afternoon, and it was my second time through, and he was like really confused. He's like, "So this is next week?" And I was like, "No, it's not next week. Like, we don't know what's coming." And I go, "What would you?" I go, "Sam, would you like to see real people as a real person as Ahsoka and a real person as?" And he lit up, and he's like, "Really?" I go, "No, would you like that?" And but he really was like ready to jump on that train.
Yeah.
And I think where we're at now. Who knows? We've heard these reports of multiple projects, not just maybe one live action, one animated, but maybe more than one each.
Yeah.
And so there's just a lot of chatter. I think there's some obvious Ahsoka, Sabine, go that route.
Sure.
But if you can cross over an Ahsoka to live action TV, go for it. Why not? Like,
there's several reasons.
There'd be a lot of fun to see.
Yeah.
And so I'm ready to start to see more of this crossover, and I'm ready, you're right. Give Dave Filoni the keys to these stories and to storytelling. And you know what? I hope that he gets a feature film, live action feature film at some point. And Rebels to me, and this is sort of confessional.
Oh,
yeah.
Welcome.
Here
Star
we go.
Wars Confessions.
Thank you.
I'm listening.
Now I'm ready.
Yes.
Okay. This story is complete. The sequel trilogy isn't. So obviously, I can make some calls on stuff, and it's like, well, I'm not done with the sequel trilogy story yet.
Sure.
I was more emotionally invested and affected by Rebels than I was The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi.
Wow.
I would agree with that.
And I can't believe I'm saying that.
But do you think that has to do primarily with the amount of time spent?
That's partially it.
Yeah.
I think TV is a different medium in some ways than film, and I'm not saying I didn't like the films. I love them.
Right.
But I was so emotional. I'm a 43-year-old man, and I'm tearing up on my couch.
Yeah.
Wow.
Both times that I watched this finale, and I'm like, wow, Dave Filoni is a great storyteller.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it really made me feel like I was watching a story told by George Lucas. It really did.
Yeah.
Let me ask this. I'm with you guys for the most part, but here, well, at least one fear is, there's the scene from something totally non-Star Wars related, and that is Young Guns.
Yes.
When Emilio Estevez as Billy the Kid says, there comes a time that the past is like an old yellowback novel.
Yes.
It's time to put it down.
Yeah.
And what I don't want is, for as much as I love these characters, I don't want something that's going to be like, hey, we're getting the band back together.
Yes.
And to just kind of build off of our love for these characters. Because I think that has the potential of, I don't want to say it would be weak, but I think that it would leave a void of other stories that we could get.
If that's all there is, I agree.
Right.
But I'm hopeful, like you guys, that we're not just going to get a animated show and maybe but we'll get more. That Disney streaming service will give us more.
Right.
We'll see more things explored in film. I'm okay with like an Ahsoka, Sabine, like band back together kind of concept. I think though Dave has proven that he'll start taking it, and you were alluding to this, Barb, like he's taking it to places like World Between Worlds. It's like,
right?
you know, like that blew Twitter apart, you know, as people were trying to like grapple with this, and lots of fans are like, I don't know how I feel, you know. So Dave is kind of like pushing the envelope. Dave Filoni is pushing the envelope.
I'll call
You're
him
rubbing
Dave.
off on
me. Thank you, Jeremy.
Only you could do that. But you know, so I'm hopeful. Like, give me more Star Wars. Like that's where I'm at. Just give me more. And if this is one of those stories, yes, you know.
Let me ask this, because this is something that fandom has had challenges with. Well, one, look, if we get the Sabine and Ahsoka spinoff, that's going to make a lot of fanboys' heads explode. So I'm all in when it comes to that.
Sure.
But with Clone Wars, with Forces of Destiny, and with Star Wars Rebels, we have three very different styles of animation. There was major pushback by a lot of folks when it comes to the Forces of Destiny style of animation. Are we ready for a new style of animation, or are we so comfortable with what we got with Rebels because now we have the look and the feel of this universe that we like it? Or are we ready to have something that may not feel as comforting as mom's apple pie when it comes to animation style? Eve, what are some of your thoughts on that?
I love change, but not when it comes to animation. And so I hope it kind of stays similar to Rebels. I think the only thing that I can compare it to recently is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon series that just ended. I thought that looked great, and they're revamping it, and it looks like something completely different, and it's terrible.
Interesting.
So I have the fear of when they kind of go from A to Z in the spectrum of animation.
Okay. Barb, what are some of your thoughts?
I kind of agree with Eve. I really liked the animation of Rebels, and I like Forces of Destiny, but those are shorts.
Right.
And I can handle that. And when I've put it on for my kids when it's the whole 22 minutes, and the stories are good, but the animation, it seems a little more juvenile than Rebels.
Sure.
And it's harder to hold my attention. And it's amazing that animation can have that effect, but it does. There's almost a level of maturity that comes with the animation that we saw in Rebels that can hold my attention more, because we're talking about episodes like Twilight of the Apprentice that has this cinematic look.
Yeah.
And I don't think they could achieve that in animation that isn't as technical if they were to do it in an animation style like Forces of Destiny.
Interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting to think about. If we had like same storyline, same themes, but different style of animation, how would some of our familiar scenes that we love so much are so familiar with actually play out? Carl, jump in. What are some of your thoughts when it comes to if we're going to get a completely new animation style? How does that impact things for you?
I'm ready for a new animation style.
Okay.
And I mean, I do like what they did in Rebels. There are actually some very beautiful just scenes. I can think of Skystrike Academy. I think of the storm that the second episode of the third season where Ezra's reaching out to save, Kanan is reaching out to save Ezra as Ezra led his first mission and it all went south. So that's just a couple. There's lots of things like that. But, you know, you think about the animation, and Dave said he wanted to work more with this animation company that he brought in for the Wolves in the Door that did the animation of, you know, as the painting on the outside of the temple moved and brought all that stuff in. So that was beautiful to me. I thought that was just great. It may be super expensive and very intensive to do something that good for the whole episode, but I would like to see something like that. I'm ready for a change.
Disney's got nothing but cash lining their pockets.
Well, that's the question, right? Because like with Clone Wars, George Lucas was pumping tons of money into that.
Right.
And it wasn't making the money back. And with Rebels, they didn't spend near as much as they did on Clone Wars, and you could tell.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, if you want to go like to different styles, that's one of the questions. Like, okay, what kind of money are we putting into this?
What's the buy-in going to be?
And age. What's the target? Because Clone Wars, you have a moment where Ahsoka decapitates like a whole bunch of Mandalorians, and it's freaking awesome. But like Rebels didn't do anything. Like everything was off screen in a lot of cases. So you're wondering, like, within animation, like, what is your age target? What is your budget?
Right.
What do you want to do with the style?
Right.
And I find that such a fascinating conversation. I wonder, based on what we've seen from Dave Filoni, I would imagine he'll want to push into some new areas, and it'll be fun to see.
Well, and that brings up a great question. When it comes to the future of Star Wars animated series under the umbrella of Lucasfilm, under the umbrella of Disney, where do you think that we're going to be pushed to next? Whether it's with story, whether it's with new characters. Like, Rebels did a great job, and Barbie alluded to this a couple times, of really unveiling some things or causing us to think differently about the Force is a great example. Whether it's with the Bendu, whether it's a World Between Worlds, all these things. Where do you think we need to be pushed as fandom next? And how might an animated series do that for us and getting us there that we may not necessarily experience in a 120-minute runtime film per se? Carl, what are some of your thoughts on that?
Well, we've only got one more movie in this most recent trilogy. So, and I know there's been books out there, and so, but just kind of seeing, because I'm still not sure exactly how the First Order works, how the government worked. So, maybe you could put something in there, because by the time they got in deeper into the series, that trilogy would be over. So you could do something that sort of parallels that timeline and give me a bigger view of, how did the First Order get to be as big as they are? What was the issues between the Resistance and the government? Why weren't they kind of coming out and really, pushing the Resistance instead of trying to be secret about it? So I think that might be something you could sort of give more details to and do character development over time in a serialized way that would give you better information and more feels than the movies would.
You know what you reminded me of, Carl? In Delilah Dawson's book, Phasma, she does such a succinct job of saying what the First Order is all about. And she literally breaks it down into these two sentences. First, period. Order, period. And for someone that has OCD, my God, I just love the First Order all of a sudden. I'm ready. Where do I sign up? But for me, it was like, there's something brilliant about that. And I think Krennic talks about that in the beginning of Rogue One. He's just like, oh no, like, we're doing good for the galaxy. And I think that, Carl, I think blending some of that into the next series, whether it's animated or perhaps live action, I think that there's something there that would be pretty cool. Wouldn't it be great to have a series, either live action or animation, that we actually look at things through the Empire or First Order's perspective?
Yeah, that's going to have to happen at some point.
Yeah. I think that it's very Howard Zinn of seeing things from that perspective. Jeremy, what are some of your thoughts on this when it comes to pushing us as fans in a new direction? What are some of your thoughts?
Well, I think, Barb, you alluded to this earlier, and a lot of you did on tonight's show, just going to those 30 years. I think you start to push into that time.
Yeah.
Like, the only other, for me, I guess you could stay between Episode 3 and A New Hope, but they're kind of doing stuff there already. Or you could jump into the after Empire Strikes Back, before Return of the Jedi. There's a gap of time there. You could do stuff. But I think it just seems like we're all pointed to, those 30 years between Episode 6 and 7.
Yeah.
And then, it's going to be here before we know it. The sequel trilogy is going to be done, and then you can move beyond that.
Right.
And so, whoa. But it seems to be that Lucasfilm is going to point to that time period. Now, what do you do with that? I think there's a few things that you could do that would really captivate people. One is, let's talk about Luke Skywalker and his academy. Do you do a standalone film with that, or like, do you do a series with that? Like, I have no idea. Or TV show, who do you get to play who? Are people going to be okay with that? A lot of questions. But I think animation, you can do that.
Okay, so that brings up the next question. And Eve, let me throw it to you. We obviously still don't know what's going to happen with Episode 9 and Carrie Fisher and Leia and things like that. Yeah. Is animation, Eve, is that a safe place to bring these legacy characters back in? And, Shelby Young, who voices Princess Leia for Forces of Destiny, has done a nice job with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think, Eve, that this is kind of a very natural way to bring in those legacy characters. It's very safe and is not going to have people's heads exploding.
I think people's heads have sufficiently exploded since The Last Jedi. But
yeah,
I
indeed.
think, yes, it is the safe choice, because I can't imagine if they went the live action route that people would be across the board happy, or they would have the same reaction that people have had with Rebels. I think if they're bringing Luke and Leia and voice actors that can emulate the actual people that embodied them roles from 40 years ago and still today, then that would be probably the safest route. Now, do they want to be safe? I don't know. With all the expansions that are going on and the streaming service and the movies and the 6 more movies, I don't know. Is safe a Disney word? I don't know.
Well, I think The Last Jedi proved that safe is not necessarily what they're into. But I'm curious if we have legacy characters. That seems like that could be a cash cow to, if nothing else, fund other projects that may not play it as safe. And Jeremy, you and I were talking off air before, like Sam Witwer can just, name the character you want him to voice, and he's your guy.
His charisma with whoever he's voicing and whatever character he's playing, it's unbelievable. It's off the charts.
Yeah.
Who did Obi-Wan? Steve Stanton? Was that Steven Stanton? Is that who it was that did Obi-Wan in
Rebels?
Yeah, in Rebels. Like, I think, and he did Tarkin too.
Right.
I think like get him to voice some characters, because he's such a talent. There's a lot of people out there that you want to keep in terms of keeping the band together. Like, bring these people back, and really quick, just talking about voice stuff. Like Freddie Prinze Jr. Was phenomenal as Kanan, and just some of the stuff he did, and I was looking at like lines that I loved, and just really quick, I just want to say this because it needs to be said.
Yeah,
he has the best line moment in all of Rebels.
Whoa.
So you ready?
I'm ready.
So he is in combat against his wife, Sarah Michelle Gellar, right? And she says, "You have you got a handsome face," and Kanan has this response where he's like, "I don't do crazy anymore," and it's just such a beautifully delivered line, and just I think we're really going to miss this cast, and how well they work together across the board, and they even allude to how they felt as family, And my hope is that we don't just get 1 or 2, but there are moments in the future where we can get these people back. And it goes for the Clone Wars as well.
Well, and Steve Bloom, the gentleman who voices Zeb, obviously talked about that in the Q&A and said, this is the first big project that he's been a part of where Cass was actually brought into some of the decision-making and behind the scenes and where things were going, instead of just like, here, read this.
Yeah.
And what a, once again, attributing that to Dave Filoni, but like what a brilliant scheme to actually have people get to know each other personally and like each other and have buy-in beyond just read this, here's your paycheck. I think it's brilliant. Well, I'll tell you what, let's land the plane on this. Wow, my voice went really high there for a minute.
Wow. Peter Brady.
Time to change. Let's land the plane on this for a while, and then we'll come back. We've got some special announcements as we get ready to wrap things up, so stick around.
We're not done yet.
Wrap it up.
All right. Hey, as we wrap things up, we've got some special announcement for you. We wrapped up our first annual Fanfic February. Everyone who participated and contributed their own creations, thank you so much for doing that. It takes a lot of courage to do, and it shows just the depth of your fandom and your gifting. So thank you for all those who entered, and all those out there in the Twitterverse that voted. Thank you to you for participating. And by the narrowest of margins, we have our answer. And as far as we know, it is devoid of any Russian influence in the voting. So as far as we can tell. So here are the 2018 Unmistakably Star Wars Fanfic winners. For the novella, the piece with the most votes was The Final Precept by Aaron Sinner. Aaron, congratulations. Congratulations.
Good job, Aaron.
And in the category of short story, the winner is Fall in Line by Katie H. So, Katie, congratulations.
Congrats.
Yay.
Katie, you and Aaron both have won a year's supply of Rice-A-Roni. No, I'm just kidding. You have it. So here's what we've got for you. We have got for each of you an autographed copy of The Storytelling Edge by Shane Snow and Joe Lazauskas, who were on the pod not too long ago. You'll also get your very own USW patch to put wherever you would like to make sure that you make friends and neighbors and people that you don't know completely jealous. And then who knows what else we'll throw in the box. So stay tuned. That will be coming your way shortly. Speaking of things that are going to be out in the mail, we've got a Taylor Gray giveaway.
Whoa.
Well, we're not actually giving away Taylor Gray.
That would be a contest.
That would be amazing. But
constitutional.
But we have got a Star Wars Rebels poster that is autographed by Taylor Gray. I got that. I don't know if I mentioned, but I was actually at a private screening.
Were you?
Yes. Anyway,
Were you?
Got
With
to
your
meet
friend
Ezra
Dave.
himself. Yeah. So we've got a Taylor Gray autographed Star Wars Rebels poster that we want to give to you. So if you would like to enter for an opportunity to perhaps win and put that up on your wall or resell it on eBay, I don't know, swing on over to unmistakably-StarWars.com/contests. And that'll give you all the info that you need. I think there's like 25 different ways that you can get your name in there. Simple stuff, too. So stuff that ballot box, and maybe you will walk away a winner. No, I'm just kidding. You're a winner anyway. If you listen to this pod, you're a winner. Hey, as always, you can catch us live on the Twitter Mondays right around 7:15 Pacific time, 10:15 Eastern time. And stay tuned for us to, I guess, triple our power and do a simulcast on Twitter, Facebook Live, and also YouTube. Talk about a technological tear that I've constructed. This is amazing. And of course, we want to thank you. Just want to thank you for hanging out with us each and every week, being faithful to just be part of the extended USW family. If not for you, quite frankly, we wouldn't be here. And of course, we also want to thank our patrons, specifically Brandon Boylan, Dave Hackerson, Michelle Grandin, Neil Lowry, William Pollock, Regina Sanders, Connie Shee, Aaron Sinner. I promise you, Aaron's winning didn't have anything to do with him being a patron. Krista Smolinski, Franklin Taylor, Brad Tracy, Michael Ward, Amy Wishman, and of course, our mystery donor for you. I fucking love C3PO. Listen, your financial investment into this little pod helps us to expand and reach the quality of programming we bring you. We know it is a sacrifice, and we are humbled and honored to be the beneficiary of your financial commitment. If you didn't catch it at the beginning of the show, our patrons this last week received close to 90 minutes of exclusive audio from the private screening down in Burbank. About a 30-minute table discussion with Dave Filoni and another roughly hour's worth of audio from the full cast Q&A after the screening. So if you want access to that, swing on over to unmistakably-StarWars.com. There's a Patreon link that'll take you right to the site, and we will send you that audio as well. Plus, our patrons are sporting some pretty cool stickers and patches and sweatshirts and hoodies and gear and merch that make everyone jealous. There's no doubt about it. It was funny because, I don't know if I mentioned this, Barb, but I was down at Burbank at a private screening last week.
You don't say.
It's true. And I had one of our patches, and the lady said, I recognize the logo.
No way.
Recognize the logo.
Wow.
So I thought, bravo.
Hey,
Yeah.
Branding, it works. Hey, listen, if you would like to join this fantastic group of folks, we would love you to do that as well. That is going to do it for our show this week, my little tauntauns. The circle is now complete. We will see you next time in the digital docking bay. And until then, may the force be with you. Good night, Twitter.